When the Son of Man comes, will he find any faith on the earth? I realize that's not a part of today's readings, but it's been a part of the past few weeks. And for the past 4 Sundays, we have been reading, our second reading is from Paul's second letter to Timothy. And today is the last of those readings. Next week we pick up with Paul's second letter to the Thessalonians. And so I wanted to kind of wrap up what we've been talking about. Some of these really great quotes that are contained in this letter, written toward the end of Paul's life, probably could well have been his last letter. And he says, my life is being poured out like a libation. You can almost hear he's exhausted. Think of all that Paul's been through in his life. In his younger years, he was a scholar, converted, became a Christian, was aggressively involved in persecuting Christians, and then aggressively involved in creating Christians. He was shipwrecked several times, put in jail several times. He was beaten, chased out of towns, and he says, I'm tired. You ever get that way? You ever have those days? But he says, I have run the good race. I have kept the faith. And I think that's really interesting because we've said several times over the past couple of weeks what they meant by to keep the faith was not to keep a body of information, but to maintain a relationship. A relationship, as I've said, that began with Abraham in the desert so many thousands of years ago, and in spite of being washed ashore, in spite of being in jail, in spite of being shipwrecked, in spite of being beaten up, and now about to be killed, he feels that God has been faithful to him, and he has kept faith with God. How do you do that? Because there are oh so many times, I think, when having been through far less, I want to say, God, really? Can't you pick on somebody else? You know, what is this? And I think the answer is in the gospel today. When the Pharisee and the publican, the Pharisee and the tax collector stand there, the tax collector just simply says, oh God, be merciful to me, a sinner. A man who may or may not have done anything wrong in his life, we don't know. All we know is that this man saw himself and his life as totally dependent upon God. And that attitude, I think, is the attitude that formed the basis of Paul's life. So that as Paul stands before God now and writes, to Timothy, he says, here I am. It's about over. And you know what? I've kept the faith. I've been true to my relationship to God. I have been true to my relationship in Jesus Christ, and I have no doubt that he will be true to me. Is there anything more that we can possibly hope for in our lives? Whether it be at the end of our life, in the middle of our life, or at any time. To be firmly convinced that we are so loved that we will never be abandoned. That we are so loved that we will never be left alone. That God will be faithful to us, and so we are faithful to God. Have you met people in your life that are like that? That seem to have that attitude? That no matter what's going on in their life, the death of a spouse, the death of a child, the death of a parent, physical ailment, whatever, they still feel that God is with them, giving the strength to maintain and to move forward. At the end of time, or at the end of this day, when the Son of Man comes, will he find any faith on the earth? I think he will. As I said last week, I think he'll find it because he'll find us. Men and women who in the midst of life experience have been so rooted in a relationship with God in Jesus Christ that we realize that it's not about us. It's not about what we do, what we achieve, what we accomplish. It's not about any of those things. It's about the relationship that we have with our God and what he and his wonder and fidelity can accomplish in us. When the Son of Man comes, will he find any faith on the earth? I say yes, he'll find us.